Saying no to someone can make your heart pound like you just stepped in front of traffic. Not because the request is dangerous, because somewhere in your nervous system it's being read that way. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that's happening and what to actually do about it. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's get into it. Last episode, I told you we'd talk about what it actually looks like to start rebuilding when you're running on empty. And I said it wasn't going to be a to-do list. It wasn't going to be a self-care list. I want to keep that promise today, so let's start there. Most burnout advice hands you more things to do. Journal more, breathe more, add a gratitude practice, a supplement, a morning routine with 7 steps. But if your nervous system is already maxed out, adding tasks doesn't rebuild anything. It just adds weight to a system that's already buckling under what it's carrying. Real rebuilding usually starts by removing something, not adding something. And for a lot of people, especially women juggling a dozen invisible roles, the thing that needs to come off the plate is something they said yes to a long time ago without ever really deciding to. So let's talk about why no is so hard in the first place. You've probably heard of fight or flight. Your body senses a threat, and it either gears up to fight it or run from it. But your nervous system actually has 2 other responses that get talked about a lot less. Freeze and fawn. Freeze is when you go still, shut down, maybe go a little numb or foggy. Fawn is the one I really want to focus on today. Fawn is when you appease, you agree, you overgive, you say yes just to make the tension in the room go away. And here's the important part. Fawning isn't a personality trait. It's not you being a people pleaser by nature, like it's just who you are. It's your nervous system deciding in a split second, faster than a conscious thought, that keeping the peace is safer than the conflict of saying no. So when you feel that gut drop, that flush of guilt, right before you're about to decline something, that's not a weakness. That's your body running an old safety calculation based on every time saying no used to actually cost you something. And that's worth sitting with for a second, because that response had to come from somewhere. Nobody is born fawning, it gets built. Maybe it was a household where saying no led to real conflict, so staying agreeable kept things calm. Maybe it was a workplace where the person who pushed back got labeled difficult, and the person who absorbed everything got called a team player. Maybe it was simply years of being the one who could handle it, so you became the one who always did. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between I'm choosing to help and I'm afraid of what happens if I don't. It just knows which pattern kept you safe before. And it keeps running that pattern over and over unless something teaches it a new one. Here's a story that might sound familiar. After years in the classroom, I moved into a role as an education specialist, guiding families through independent study and homeschooling. And it was actually less overwhelming at first. Part of why I made that switch was that teaching had left me with 0 time to decompress, and I needed that back. But about 2 years in, I started saying yes again. I became a mentor for new education specialists. Then I took on lead proctor for our high school final exams. Then I became one of the presenters for new families considering the school. The next year, I added teaching our high school music class. And the year after that, instructional coaching on top of everything else. One role had quietly become 6. I did all of it for about 2 years before anything came off my plate. Instructional coaching was the first thing to go. And then not long after that, my admin asked if I'd take on student council. And before I could even think about it, I heard myself say, "Hell no," out loud. It came out so fast I couldn't stop it. Looking back, that's exactly what fawning breaking down looks like. My body had simply run out of patience for taking on one more thing, and it answered before I did. From there, I started releasing things one at a time. Instructional coaching first, then presenting for new families, then teaching music. Eventually, I moved into a new role as an inclusion specialist and let go of everything else at once. The whole arc from the first extra role to finally being down to just one job again took about 4 or 5 years. Honestly, there wasn't one big moment where I said, I can't do this anymore. It was slower than that. It was a quiet realization that I wanted some of my time back for myself instead of handing all of it to everyone else. And I remember exactly what it felt like the first time I told my boss I needed to step back. I said I was overwhelmed and needed room to breathe, and the guilt that came up in that conversation was enormous. Part of me wanted to take it back immediately to say, never mind, if you're really in a bind, I'll keep doing it. But I stayed quiet. I let myself feel the guilt instead of fixing it. And once I got through that conversation, something I wasn't expecting happened. Relief washed over me. And right behind it, a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. Quick break. If this is resonating and you don't want to miss where this series goes next, come join my weekly newsletter. It's where I go deeper on this stuff, share what's actually working, and give you the next piece before it even goes up as a video. Links in the description and the pinned comment below. So here's the actual skill. The one nobody tells you is a nervous system skill. Boundaries aren't a mindset shift. They're a body skill, which means you build them the same way you're building any physical skill. Small, repeated, slightly uncomfortable reps. Not one big dramatic overhaul where you're renegotiating your entire life in a single conversation. You don't need a speech. You need one small no said out loud, followed by the physical proof that you survived it. That's the whole mechanism. Your nervous system doesn't update on logic. It updates on evidence. Every time you set a small limit and the world doesn't end, that's a data point. And enough data points start to outweigh the whole story. What does that actually look like in practice? It's smaller than you think. It might be saying, let me check my schedule and get back to you, instead of yes on the spot. It might be declining one small thing this week that you would have automatically absorbed a month ago. It's not about becoming someone who says no to everything. It's about interrupting the automatic yes, just enough times that your body learns it has a choice in the moment instead of just reacting. And I want to be honest with you about what this feels like when it starts working, because it doesn't feel like relief right away. It usually feels like guilt. Guilt that sits in your chest for a while after you've said no, even when you know it was the right call. That guilt isn't proof you did something wrong. It's proof you're doing something unfamiliar. Give it time, and that guilt gets quieter. Not gone, quieter. Which, if you remember from last episode, is exactly the kind of rebuilding we're talking about. Not a checklist, just a slow, repeated proof to your own body that setting a limit doesn't mean losing your safety. And if you want to go deeper on how this connects back to daily nervous system regulation as a whole, I made a video exactly on that. You can check it out by clicking right here. Progress doesn't come from pressure, it comes from clarity.